Welcome to this episode of Manufacturing Mavericks. I'm your host, Greg McHale. As the founder of Datanomix, I've had the privilege of visiting hundreds of shops all across the country, and in those visits, I've met some of the most incredible and innovative people in this industry. Our goal with the Manufacturing Mavericks podcast is to highlight those leaders, those mavericks of manufacturing who are innovating not just with technology, but with culture, people, and process too, so we can all learn not just what they do, but why they do it. We'll dig into what got them into manufacturing, what fires them up to go to work every single day and pour their blood, sweat, and tears into keeping the manufacturing dream alive in our country. With that, I'm honored to introduce today's manufacturing maverick, Eric Van Orden. Welcome to the show, Eric. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here and have this opportunity. I want to say thank you, and very humbling that, you want my opinion. I feel like I'm just a guy. Humbling experience, but excited.
That's great, Eric. I knew that the second I met you, I knew you were a manufacturing maverick, and there's a specific reason. I think we'll get into some of that story a little bit later in the podcast. But the fact that you made me come meet you at 4:00 in the morning to try to prove some new technology to you is a pretty maverick move, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and sometimes talked a lot in the past also, and you have a busy schedule. I have home outside of work, and that just happened to be the time that fit perfect for us. So but why
I'm
not?
Glad it fit perfectly for us too. It was a great meeting. We'll get back to that story in a little bit. Eric, Paramount Machine, Salt Lake City, Utah, very well respected company. Very known in the area in NTMA as high quality, high precision, high technology company. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the story of Paramount Machine?
Paramount Machine, my dad started the company in his backyard, probably, I think it was close to 28 years ago, somewhere around there, just with the idea of trying to be better and wanted to control a little bit more of his destiny. Made a couple moves, and now we're where we're at now. It's 30,000 square foot facility, pretty much entirely CNC. We have a couple manuals for support equipment, about 70 full-time employees, horizontals, multi-axis, mills, multi-channel, mill turns, Swiss machines, chucking lathes, wire EDM, sinker EDM. We are pretty well involved in most of the subtractive manufacturing processes. So a little bit of an overview of just the company and technology, broad strokes.
Awesome. So your dad started a company, 25, 30 years ago or so. Does that mean that you grew up, all around manufacturing in the blood? Did you not take an interest in manufacturing early on? How did you end up catching the bug?
I definitely had a mechanical inclination to things. I have to thank my dad of pushing me when I was young. I remember one of the first toys I had was an erector set, and being able to build things with that and put things together. He'll also tell stories that buy me a brand new toy and I'd have it taken apart in 10 minutes. And not quite sure why I would do that, but I wanted to take it apart and wanted to see how it worked. And when the shop was in the backyard, I was always out there hanging out throughout like junior high. My summers, I'd get up and eat breakfast, and I'd either go ride my bike. At that time, the shop was only like 5 miles away from our house. So I'd go ride my bike to the shop, and that's how I spent my summers, was hanging out in the shop. And then in high school, I got in trouble a couple of times because my teachers would call because I wasn't at school. And I wasn't at school because I was at the shop. And great group of guys that was the core group, and they were only 4-5 years older than me, but I would just go out in the shop and hang out with them, and what are you doing and how are you doing this? And it was really fun and exciting time for me.
I don't know that I've heard of too many folks who, when they were cutting class, it was actually to be working and learning, but on something they cared more about than the schoolwork, which makes a ton of sense because it's far more interesting than anything that happens inside of the school.
And I definitely had to toe the line. And when those conversations did happen, it usually started with, hey, so-and-so teacher called, what's your grade in their class? If it wasn't at least an A minus, then I was expected to be there. The high expectations there from that my dad instilled in me, I made sure that I had things taken care of. And then at that point, it was like, oh, what else can I really ask?
Did you then go right into the family business after school? Did you explore other career opportunities? How did that go out?
I did not. So I moved down to Southern Utah when I graduated high school. I wanted to go to college down there. It was a fun time. Wonder sometimes what I did learn down there, but it was fun. Did that for a year, and then I moved back up to Salt Lake, and I was going to school, and I worked at American Express customer service, answering phones. The path that I was on was I was working on my bachelor's in business administration, and honestly, after that, I wanted to go to law school because I thought that with an MBA and a law degree, you can pretty much pick and choose anything you want to do.
Sure.
I maybe had like some golden plan of, well, maybe I'll get my MBA, get my law degree. I was planning on working at American Express for a while, and then maybe one day I'd come to the shop and help run things. Course of events, life happens, and called my dad one day and said, I don't like what I'm doing. I want to come be a machinist. I want to come work at the shop. If I can machine parts and make a decent living that way, I think that will make me happy. He said, well, you're going to have to give me a couple weeks because I need to find out if we have an opening for you and where I would be able to put you. I'm not just going to say yes because you're my kid.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. A couple weeks later, put in my 2 weeks at American Express and ended up here. And that was 13 years ago. So I've been here full time for 13 years since.
Even though, a lot of people would think, yeah, it's the owner's son. Of course, he's just going to walk in. He's going to give him some, cush opportunity inside the company. Your dad actually said, wait a minute, let me see if we even have something for you. And then you started out what? You started out machining right away?
Nope. I started out hand sanding parts. We had a really ambitious guy that was working for us at that time, building these plates, and they had like little pockets inside of them. At first, it was small, 1-2 piece things. And he took the time to stone and sand all the mill lines out of the pockets because it was like they were using it for a visual thing. They would put a piece of glass or something on top of it and run some fluids through it. And so being able to see just like a complete grain instead of the machine lines, they really appreciated. Production greatly ramped up. We had 4 bays, 6 bays, and 12 bays. Each one had that many number of pockets, and there were hundreds of them. And so I sat at a desk and I used a stone and a reciprocating sander and Scotch-Brite and made sure that every single one of those had every mill line out of it and a nice fine grain that ran vertical.
Wow. That's some serious work.
It was good work, but it was terrible work. I hated it.
Yeah.
And it was good experience though. And like, this is all audio, you can't see, but like there is a little bit of an internal joke that there's Paramount's expectations. And then if you raise your hand about 3 feet above that, there's Eric's expectations.
Nice.
Definitely it hasn't been the boss's kid. And I never wanted it to be either. I wanted to be, I grew up in the shop and I grew up being friends with a lot of the core group. And I wanted to be respected from them as a peer, as a coworker, and what I was able to do and accomplish, not who I was.
Sure. I mean, and massive credit to your dad for seeing it the same way, right? It's easy for some young guy just to come in and waltz over the top. And it's like, can that guy even run a machine? Does he even know? The answer is you did, and you'd been doing it pretty much your whole life, but you also earned your way through some of the harder work, some of the harder jobs.
Oh yeah, definitely did. And I appreciated all that. So did hand sanding, deburring, stuff like that for a while, and then got into wire EDM work. I needed some help in the wire EDM. At the time we had 2 of them, and that was my first foray into like actual machining, was wire EDM. So I did that for a couple of years. That followed us. From that shop, we moved to the current location. We started to do more wire EDM work. We were able to get a third wire, kind of grew that a little bit. In between that time, wire work can be boring because it takes forever. I would go out on our chucking lathes. We have some Mori NLs that we run, and I would go out and start learning on the NLs, spend time out there doing some production work. And then at the time also, we had probably 5 Bridgeports and 4 engine lathes. Super grateful. There's an old timer that kind of took me under his wing and taught me a lot about running an engine lathe and manual mill. They all had readouts on them with like a conversational control. So we do little programs and things like that. And definitely he took me under his wing and taught me some of that stuff. And he had high expectations for me too. I remember coming into work a few times and he would just give me a look and be like, "Oh, you stayed out too late, huh?" I was like, "Yeah." Well, it's not going to get any easier. So here we go. Get ready to set up the steady rest because we're boring long parts.
Oh man.
Had to work through all that and then moved to the eventual part where I'm at now. I mainly head the Swiss area. Bought one machine 8 years ago. We've been on like a year and a half, buy another one. We're up to, I got to think and count in my head. We're up to 7, I believe now. That's mainly where I'm at, head up the process there, and then started to delve into other aspects like tooling, machine monitoring, things like that.
So you guys had no Swiss machines 8 years ago, and then basically you ended up leading that department, leading that effort. Was it, how did it come about that Paramount got into Swiss machining as part of its business?
We had a seasonal company that we were doing work for, and they had a large volume of parts that they wanted us to try and get through. They're into snowmaking equipment, right? Orders started to get placed September, August, and if it wasn't done and completed on the mountain by the middle of October, you couldn't sell it. After that point, it's too late in the season. Really short time frame between when they placed orders and when we had to deliver parts, and had an opportunity with some smaller diameter stuff. And fortunately, the PO was large enough that we decided, hey, this the only way we're going to get this done in time is if we do make a delve into some Swiss and experiment with that. And there's me and another guy on the chucking lathes, a guy that I've known for my entire life that has worked at the shop, and he taught me a ton. So it was me and him that were on the Swiss, and he's really good at what he was doing. And so kind of got pulled back into there and just kind of had to take that head first dive. And here we go. We got to start making parts.
How much lead time did you have to get that machine in order to make the parts on time? Like, how much of a heads up did you have?
Once the machine was on the floor, we probably had about 4 weeks to do 6,000 parts.
Wow.
I just ran 15,000 parts in 5 days. Went through the weekend. But when you're not the same job, okay. Different parts.
That's quite an improvement.
No, different parts. But when it's really hard to run a Swiss machine because the way you have to think about it is so much different. And like there's different ways to go about it. And it was completely new to all of us. And so if anyone's listening, you're like, and depending on the complexity of the parts, sure, like 6,000 parts in 4 weeks is easy, but there was a pretty big hurdle, and we were able to clear that, and we weren't 100% great at it. We did some 2-op stuff that I built blanks and sent them to the mill, and the mill put slots in them, and so kind of that helped with doubling up production. And in that 6,000 parts, there was probably 30 part numbers, so it wasn't just one run of one part. There was lots of things to change out and do.
Yep.
Still learning and figuring it out as we went. We're actually at 1.2 million parts made on that machine now.
Wow. 1.2 million parts made. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
One of the things that we usually dig into next is describe the culture of your shop. But I mean, I think you just gave a great example. Here's an order for parts we've never made before. The only way we can make them is buy a machine, and then we have 4 weeks to get them right. You think that's a good description of the culture of your shop? Or yeah, what would you add to that?
I think the shop's great. We have a very, very dedicated group of people. We're, like I said, about 70 employees. It's hard to find 70 dedicated people. You're going to have stragglers here and there, but I really think we have one of the best groups that we've ever had right now. And there's a lot of talent and potential in the shop right now. And we're working on, like what you mentioned, the NTMA stuff. We're working with the NTMA and with some of the schools in Utah and trying to create an apprenticeship program, because there isn't an apprenticeship program in Utah. So we're trying to bring new people in and get them excited about manufacturing. The shop's like a family, really. And maybe I'm biased because I've been here, I said 13 years full-time, but really I've been here at least in some capacity for my entire life, basically 34. So Dad started the shop when I was 6. So I've been around it, and the guys that we have, they really are like family. There's guys I call here my uncle. That's my Uncle Jim. No relationship, but he's my uncle.
Yeah.
And we have a really good group, and everyone's committed to success. And this is this is a part where it's like, I'm just a guy. Like, part of my story is my dad. He's a huge influence. I haven't had the opportunity to work in other machine shops, but a lot of other people have, and they all talk to me. They all tell me the same thing, that Steve's the best boss we've ever had. He cares about his employees. And when Paramount succeeds, everyone succeeds. It doesn't walk out the door in his pocket. He doesn't go buy a brand new truck. He's got I think his truck's almost 20 years old right now. And the truck he had before that was 20 years old. He's lived in the same house for 37 years. Like, the profit and the revenue that the shop makes doesn't walk out the door with him. It gets passed around to everyone else in multiple ways. Wages, bonuses. It goes into manufacturing equipment. People walk in the door, and we're definitely a DMG Mori house. Every machine, save one, is a DMG Mori. And the one that isn't is an Akuma. So still another, not knocking on them, they have their place, but it's not a shop full of Haas's. And even the Swiss aren't DMGs. The first one we did buy was a Hanwha, and that was kind of a more of like a budget, more entry level, but we stepped up to Sagami, and Sagami is one of the most respected names in Swiss. Like,
yep,
they're definitely the top 3. So we do have some older Moris, but they're not any older than 13 years. And I'd say the average age is probably closer to 5 or 6 years old.
Sure.
That technology and bringing that in, and that adds to the culture. And we do a lot of fun things around here, and we like to have a good time. We actually had a St. Patrick's lunch today, corned beef and cabbage and potatoes and desserts, all
Awesome.
catered in today. And everyone gets on the intercom and lunch is ready, and Steve doesn't make anyone clock out to go do the company lunch, and I'll get paid to, hopefully some machines are running, but we get paid to sit in the break room and hang out with each other and do things that get everyone involved.
That's fantastic. I mean, when you walk in to the shop, it's obvious, like you said, the newness of machines, the presence of technology. You guys have made some investments in robotics that I've seen, a lot of palletized equipment, lots of automation, high-end Swiss machines, and then, other technology too, software products, inspection equipment. One of the things that really struck me, the first time we met, maybe we'll get to the 4 a.m. story, is,
there you go.
here I was with our brand new sales rep out of Denver a couple years ago. He says, yeah, Andrew Lusty, great employee of ours, Datanomix in his blood guy for sure. And his customers love him. And, he's with us, a month and a half or so. And, we mostly been selling on the East Coast at that point. And he was really our first one to open up the Western side of the country. He says, the first chapter of my strategy is Salt Lake City. And I go, Salt Lake City? I never been to Utah. Like, what do I, like LA, like Seattle, like Phoenix, tell me what I'm missing. And he says, no, you got to understand the NTMA is very strong in that area. Salt Lake City is a very industrious place. Companies really work together to learn from each other and, come up with best practices. And it's a very different kind of a mindset than probably what you've seen in other parts of the country. And, I promise if you come out here, it'll be well worth your time. I end up going out there with him and we got several meetings set up, and he's like, there's this one I'm still working on, Paramount Machine, Eric is this guy I've called on, in prior companies with, doing quality equipment and stuff like that. And he's just so toasted on monitoring. He's tried it like 3-4 times. He's had enough. He's not interested. He's like, so I pushed him. He said, I'll tell you what, if your stuff's so good, why don't you come show it to me at 4:00 in the morning? And so I said, done. Right. I think we had like a 7 or 8 a.m. flight out that morning. We had been out there a couple days. We came and we knocked on your shop door at 4:00 in the pitch black. And, you were there to very kindly let us in. And man, I mean, the second we walked into your shop, it was obvious that you guys were on your game, that you had invested in technology. Obviously, because in some cases, things you invested in, you're kind of, what some people would call an early adopter, right? You look at technology that's new and see if it can help the business. And that's pretty unique in manufacturing, right? A lot of manufacturers are sometimes seen as later adopters versus early adopters. So, I mean, what is it in your experience in being there, and how you've come up through the shop that makes you look at things on the early edge of the curve? What part of you, drives that?
Oh, there's a couple of things in that story you just told, and I want to touch on a couple of them. Salt Lake and northern Utah and even southern Utah is actually a really huge industrial place. We have a lot of things going on in Salt Lake, and you had mentioned, industrious. That's the state motto, is industry. So I think that it's just kind of in people's DNA that they work hard. And also too, the NTMA, and machinists know this, it doesn't matter where you go to what shop, you have a square part, they're going to put it on a mill, they're going to rough it out with a face, they're going to hit all the faces with a face mill, they're going to pocket it with something big, they're going to finish the small corners with small tools. There's nothing that we don't know the other person isn't doing. And so if true. We try and be malicious or conniving and try and keep these little pockets of secrets, and don't get me wrong, there are some areas that it's hey, I figured out if you use this tool to do this, you can get this feature from this angle, and then you can reduce cycle time. And, there are little secrets there, but as a broad, industry, manufacturing, everyone does it the same way. And if you try to hide and be secretive from your competitors, it puts a bad name out. And so, yeah, we are involved in the NTMA, and a lot of the shops are involved in the NTMA, and we help each other out and help those problems. And being on the forefront of technology, sometimes it's hard to specifically understand. I was very turned off from machine monitoring. I did not like it. We had inconsistencies in data. It basically turned into a mobile patrol light. You're across the shop, you see if the light's green, if it's red, then you go take care of it. Well, now I'm at home and, machine stopped. Hey, I got time. I'll run in and see if I can get it going again. It was just a mobile patrol light. That's all it was. Mm-hmm. Didn't do anything for us. Everything in this world is born from manufacturing. There isn't, look around you at your house, in your car, at work, anywhere. Everything is born from manufacturing. So manufacturing itself has to be invested in technological advances. Dealing with some of the forefront companies like DMG, like Akuma, like Sagami, they have the capital expenditure, they have the budget to be able to produce technology. Sometimes we may not always understand that technology. And I'll put this with machine monitoring. don't really understand it. I'm good at putting holes in parts. I'm not a data scientist, so don't really understand it. But I know that if you look at every large company, they are going that way. It's an eventual path that we're eventually going to have to get on. So let's start early so that we're not late to the party. Because all of a sudden, and this is the way like 3D printing and additive, casting houses should be scared shitless right now, because that was already a dying industry. But the way the additive is going, sure, some stuff's still going to be cast, and until you get the price down for like actual metallurgical printing or and printing's a lazy word, but additive manufacturing, once you get that to a cost point, castings are going to dry up. And there's always going to be some subtractive. I don't think you can necessarily get away with that. And we have like PLA filament printers here in the shop, and we're experimenting with fixtures and work holding. And it's not the metallurgical additive, but we're starting, when they've been here we've had them for 6 years in the shop. And because guess what? We know it's coming. And just like machine monitoring, we know it's coming. And it's so funny. You don't need machine monitoring to tell you that Eric sucks at running a machine and can't get parts off. Like, you know that, right? You already know some of those things about your shop. It is very interesting with Andrew because he came from metrology side of things. And honestly, that meeting was like on a flyer because I didn't understand what he was actually trying to sell. And it's like, I don't know, some monitor, like I think it's a measurement thing. I don't know what it is. And like talked with one of my coworkers, Devin, and told him about it. I was like, I don't know, dude did really good stuff for us when he was with metrology. Like, kind of feel bad for him, kind of taking it as just like, cool, show me what you got. I'm not quite sure what there is. And I've seen some of your media, but I've been heavily quoted as the religious revelation that I had.
That's your line. That was your line, man.
It was. And that's like, Utah influence, because everyone knows, oh, well, Utah just has a bunch of Mormons, right? Like,
yeah, right.
So that was my religious revelation was, holy cow, like, you're telling me I didn't have to do anything, and you could tell me that much about my part and about my cycle time, and about not even cycle time. Cycle time is a broken word, because you walk out in the shop, well, what's your how long does it take to make a part? Well, 2 seconds. Okay, so that means I'm going to change that 30 seconds, because then I can do better math. Yeah. So it's like, cool. So you should be getting 2 parts a minute and you get 120 parts an hour, right? Well, no, I only have 5 parts. Well, you told me it's 30 seconds. So what's going on? Well, the tools break after everything I do, and then I got to change all the tools. Okay, so yes, your cycle time's 2 minutes, but your production time is actually, we'll go to 6 parts an hour. It's 10 minutes a piece. Like, Datanomix tells you that. And that's why I say cycle time is a broken word. We really need to change the industry to being more focused on production time. Just the information that was available, and definitely have had some growing pains throughout the entire shop with Datanomix. And it hasn't always been 100%. And some of that was like, it comes down to program structure, process. It comes down to, you told me that we had an issue one time where we weren't counting parts correctly with the right parts counter.
Yep.
Process has to be correct. But one thing I definitely can attest to, and I get to see this firsthand because of the area I am in, on the Swiss machines, it was just right from day one. You literally plugged in the connection and started getting valuable data. Anyone in manufacturing knows that not every job's a winner. There's losers all the time.
Oh yeah.
And trying to find those losers. And sometimes you can work with losers. You can go back to your buyer and say, look, this is where I need to be. I know that you want this price point, but this is where I have to be. If I'm not there, then I'm losing money.
Yep.
And sometimes that's a guessing game, and it's heavily influenced on ERP data entry from the shop floor. And guess what? I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I don't know if I always clocked into the job for the right amount of time.
You and millions of other people.
But you know what Datanomix knows? It knows exactly what the machine did because it only reads what the machine did, and the machine does what the machine does every single time. The excuse of, I don't know what the machine just took off, did a random thing. I don't know why it went there. Well, it went there because you told it to go there. Or you switched programs and you ran the wrong program, or you set your tool wrong, or you I've been a victim of this. Guess what? Modal codes. I was in G0, not G1. So guess what happened to the spindle and the tool? They made immediate contact. But it did exactly what I told it to do. But yeah, just being on, and you mentioned robotics. We bought our first FANUC robot arm to load one of our NLs. Had a good project going with the company. 2 months after we put it on the floor, they canceled orders and switched to in-house manufacturing. So now it's cool. What do we do with this technology? Well, guess what? Round parts are round parts, and you can find round parts that are similar to other round parts. So we started using that for other things. There's some automotive stuff that we've been doing that we would have never been able to do if we didn't buy that machine for a completely different sector, for a completely different project. But we were able to adapt and to use and think outside. That's the secret, right? I told you everyone knows how you manufacture stuff. Being able to think outside of the box, that's the secret. Did that, and our Akuma's got a FANUC load and go system on it, so that's a robot fed machine. We just recently, when we first moved to this building that we're in, I say 30,000 square feet, and it was huge. We had guys skateboarding around with $8,000 aluminum chassis going from one end to the other to get to its inspection faster. And in hindsight, it's I don't know if we should have been doing that, because that's an expensive part to be skateboarding around on.
You gotta have stories, though.
You have to have stories. There's a picture floating around somewhere of me on a unicycle riding through the shop.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, but now we've grown so much that floor space is getting tight, and we're trying to better utilize floor space, right? Because every square foot of floor space has a dollar value tied to it. So one of the things that we recently invested in is a NL gantry loader. Yes, it's larger than an NL 2500, but it's not that much larger. Do you know how much more productive it is? It's 100 times more productive. We're cranking through parts on that. So utilizing square footage has also pushed us to be more adaptable to incoming technology. Just maximize, you talked about palletized machines. We have all of our not all of them. We have 2 standalones and 6 or 7 palletized ones. Guess what? They all have 320 tool magazines on them. You want to know why? Because that's vertical floor space. And to have 320 tools in a machine, and on a palleted machine, you could be running, plastic, aluminum, high temp alloys, hardened steels. You need different tools for all of those, and to be able to just go from that subset. And some of these machines come standard with a 60 tool changer. Well, 60 tools sounds good until you start getting into switching materials, production, sister tools. Now we just load those magazines up and tools are in an instant.
You're talking about, so you've been early in investing in software. You think about your physical space, not just in terms of can I get a machine in there, but basically what capability can I get almost per square foot, right? And this is your thinking outside the box. It's it's not, do I need a lathe? Do I need a mill? It's how much capability can I pack into that? Okay, a gantry's huge, but it's 100 times more productive. Basically, that mindset is probably a significant part of what makes people love working there. What was obvious to me when we walked in the door, and what's obvious, the times I visited and what I see from, you guys and the crew there is, it's a place where innovation is sought after. You're expected to innovate, right? I mean, and that clearly comes from you and your dad.
It's more him than me. I just get to help follow. I get to help lead his dream. But yeah, it's innovation, and we are a bunch of innovators here in technology and like early adopters to software. Not an early adopter to using Mastercam or Esprit, which are the two that we mainly use in house. But we have at least 20 seats of Mastercam, 6 seats of Esprit. We feel like we're a little bit different than most shops where there's a computer with a CAD CAM software seat in front of every machine. And we don't have lead programmers. Everyone makes their own programs. And that lets guys be able to innovate and be able to try new things. And they're not stuck to, well, I don't know, the programmer just gave me this, and now I got to go push the button and spray and pray. Like, so they really are in tune to what's going on. And if everyone has access to the internet here and access to production manufacturing, access to modern machine shop, all of these things on the internet, all the tooling websites. If someone finds something, there's no one to say, no, you can't do that. We always say, okay, great. When do you need it? You know, my role's involved into helping out with tooling. Tooling can be a large expenditure for a company, but it's also something that can be the most productive. Yeah, we could buy a $2 drill and run it slower and have poorer finishes and deal with location issues, or we buy an $80 carbide drill and run it at 100 inches a minute, have better finishes, better accuracy. It runs 100 times as long. Well, which one's more productive? Yes, one cost more initially, but which one was more productive? And you know, we can't, that's all we can sell is machine time. So however the most you can be productive with it. And like I said too, like with the software and kind of where I was going with the whole Mastercam thing and Esprit is that you have to figure out how to get new people into manufacturing, because manufacturing is at a crossroads. There's a lot of guys in the industry that are 50, 60, even 70 years old. If no one fills that void, then it's just going to stop, which can't happen. Local cities, it can't happen for states, the country. Like, we need manufacturing. So how do you get people, the newer generation that likes to play video games, likes to spend time online? How do you get them involved? Well, we can say we can get them involved because everyone has access to being able to program. And they see that and they come in and they see, oh, this is cool. Like, everyone's using a computer and everything's nice in here. Like, nothing's, you know, some shops are like a dungeon, right? Poor lighting, floors covered in chips.
Definitely.
I'm a NASCAR fan, and it's like Roger Penske keeps one of the cleanest shops. They call it Penske Clean. And he has a high expectation of that. And, you know, the first thing we did when we bought the building, we sanded all the floors and painted and sealed them. And when they get scuffed up, we repaint them and reseal them. We painted the entire, all the walls. We painted the ceiling. Everything's bright. We have hundreds and hundreds of lights in the facility. Like, it's a nice, clean area to come and work. So that's inviting to the newer generation. They don't want to go work in a dungeon. They don't want to be covered in oil at the end of the day.
100% true. Your work environment is definitely one of the nicer ones I've seen. And one of the things you touched on earlier with the Mastercam, the Esprit, you know, CAD cam in front of every machine. I can definitely tell you all the places I've been in, it's super unique. And also that you have the expectation on the folks on your team, and, you know, not just the expectation, but that you actually motivate them and want them to own the part, literally from print to inspection. You're not just asking for button pushing, you're asking for that end-to-end process. And of course, I mean, when you think about it, that's going to be one of the things that incentivizes people to say, hey, I was looking at this and I think we can do this differently. Maybe it's a different tool. Maybe it's a different methodology. Maybe it's changes to the program, but you're basically making everyone a mini owner of, every process inside of Paramount. Like I say, that's definitely not something that I see everywhere. And I've been a bunch of places. It's really special.
Yeah, it works out good. It's been successful for us, and you hit it there. Like, there's the old saying, like, "I'll drive it like a rental." But now you tell someone to do that in their own car, and they're like, "Well, but I have to get an oil change, and tires aren't cheap, and if I just burn them off, then that's going to cost me money." And with ownership, you take better care of things. And yes, we do try and instill that, hey, here's the print, here's the billet, like, it's yours. Make it, and give them ownership of the part.
It's fantastic. And I know you've been digging into some tooling stuff lately. One of the customers I was with earlier this week said $200 tool might be the cheapest tool you could ever buy for a certain job.
Oh yeah, definitely.
If it keeps running, it's a lot better than the $10 tool that you're changing every however many pieces,
I do get some grief from some of the guys, and some of them are newer, but they always give me grief that, oh yeah, the tooling guys love it when they come here because they just come talk to you and you spend money. And it's like, okay, yes, but do you know how much more productive we are because of that? And that's another thing that Steve's great about too. I keep going back to him. It's his shop. I'm fortunate enough to be able to help facilitate his dream on the floor because he is in the office so much, and that's mainly my role, is on the floor. I'm not in the office a whole lot. And so it's fortunate that I get to facilitate that. And that's what I went back to, like, the money that comes into the shop goes back to the shop, and either the employees or in technology, tooling, machines, anything like that. And yeah, the ISCAR guy, the Walter guy, they love me, but I also know that they're helping to make me more productive. And I've built great relationships with a lot of them that they don't come in to try and sell tools. They just come in and say, what's going on? And we have a real conversation. And I talked to the ISCAR guy about what the Walter tool's doing, about what the MA Ford tool's doing. And the ISCAR guy gives me his input on it. And his input isn't always, oh, well, it doesn't work because you don't have a ISCAR thing. It's genuine feedback and talking about the technology behind the tool and the application and what's happening in the cut. You don't get that if you don't build relationships. And maybe that's part of the key thing in, like, the culture at the shop here too, is like, we build relationships with people, and building relationships is very important in this industry.
It's everything, man. And even though, like I say, we walked up to a dark door at 4:00 in the morning, and I'm like, man, what's this mean? Is this guy going to be tough, or what? What? And you are tough. You make people prove it, man. You make people earn it. But once we connected on value and being able to help each other and being partners, you guys are fantastic to work with, and so is everybody inside your company.
Yeah, it's great. And I don't know, I think that a lot of people can continue to get into manufacturing, can be successful. And, like, the same story I had of, what I'm doing isn't working. If I went to work and made parts and worked hard and made a good living that way, I'll be happy. This is one of my, there's two quotes I want to tell you during this thing. And one of them is Sam Walton: high expectations are the key to everything. If we don't have high expectations, what are we really holding ourselves to? And then a little bit more of the, like, philosophy that I've adopted lately. And I wish that I could get everyone to, I'm still working on it. I got to try and figure out, I'm trying to get this as a banner to put up on the shop. But Winston Churchill said, I like for things to happen, and when they don't happen, I like to make them happen. And that goes back to taking ownership of something. And, we all want great things to happen, but some of us just sit there and say, oh, it didn't happen this time. And then there's the other group that says, it didn't happen, but I'm going to make it happen. And you take ownership of it, and you find the tool path, you find the tool, you find the technology, you persevere and are able to go forward. If you're stagnant, you've seen it. How many shops are going out of business because they're stagnant?
Oh, yeah. I mean, more than should be, that's for sure.
Definitely. And you have to survive, you have to be on the forefront of that, and you have to participate, and you have to be engaged.
I think I'm going to do something fun for you related to that Winston Churchill saying.
Great.
I think I can make something happen for you.
All right. Perfect. We talked about partnerships, and I feel in relationships, you're going out on a limb there, and hey, I can do something for you, and that builds a relationship. We've built a relationship together, and we've built a partnership. And I talk to other people, other shops about Datanomix, and sometimes it's like, oh, geez, are you the pitch guy for Datanomix? It's like, no, I just believe in it. I just believe in it, and if they can be successful, then that helps me be successful. Like, we're a partnership in this. We're not in a service industry. Yes, we provide a service, but we're not in a service industry.
Right. To be in this industry, right? To be in precision manufacturing, to be relevant for the next generation of this industry. If it's not about people, technology, and relationships, I'm not sure what it is about, right? Those are just such key ingredients.
Definitely. Yeah, it's relationships, it's support. I have a great wife that probably wants to throw my phone in the toilet sometimes because what are you doing? Oh, I'm looking at Datanomix. What are you doing? Oh, I'm watching this video about a tool. But she's very supportive. She's in a tough career herself, and understands the dedication it takes, and she supports me in my dedication. And I'm very dedicated to keeping manufacturing alive, not only because I kind of say it's like the backbone of the country, but also it's how I make a living. It's how I can continue to provide for my kids, and that I can teach them, hey, you can work hard and be good.
Similar to what your dad did for you, right?
Yep. Similar to that. And it's not always fun. It's not always easy. And, there's things at home that I probably ride my kids about, but I just want them to be better and know what. And that's what my dad held me to is, I know you can be better than this. So I'm going to push you. And yes, I need more patience with my kids at home, but I do try to push them to be successful, and probably could have more patience at work too with some of the interactions I have. But it is based off of high expectations are the key to everything. And a lot of the times I have pretty high expectations of what I think should happen.
That's fantastic. All right. I was able to, off on the side here during our podcast, I was able to do the thing I wanted to do for you. So when you get back out on the shop floor, I got a surprise for you in your area.
Perfect. Awesome. We won't be ripping chips anymore.
Do you like that one?
That was funny. I noticed that the other day that someone pointed out on the TV monitor, like, ripping chips. What's going on there? And I looked at the screen. It's like, oh, we'll see how it's on the down machine page and there's no machines there. Like, I wonder if they built that in. Like, if all the machines aren't down, we're ripping chips.
Exactly, and man.
It's funny. Like, it's kind of became like a catchphrase type thing. Like, walk past and I'll just hear people like, oh, ripping chips.
I love to hear that. That was actually the suggestion of one of our customer success engineers who was with a customer, and they were like, hey, when the down machines page is empty, that's a great thing. Like, why don't you guys throw some stuff in there to, motivate our guys or make them laugh or something like that? So he came up with that completely on his own. He found the GIF and he said, just put this GIF in there when there's no machines. That's and awesome. Down machines. And, so that's like you said, innovation has to come from anywhere, right? So we're like, that's a beautiful idea. People are going to love it. And sure enough, that's great to hear that we've put that in the vocabulary of your guys for having it up there, because it means it's having the effect that it was meant to.
Yeah, it does. And There's also been some jokes of like, well, we run lathes. That's not what our chips look like.
Yeah, we did talk about that. I was like, some guys are going to be like, that's not what ours look like.
Well, I have to remind everyone, and I don't know, kind of wrapping up here, but I'm going to jump back into it. I have to remind everyone, guess what? You have a live tooling lathe. And every lathe that we have in the shop has Y-axis and live tooling because of the capabilities it adds. And that's a technology that it's not a new technology. It's been around for a while, but it's one that a lot of people don't invest in. And sure, sometimes you don't necessarily need live tooling on every single lathe. But yeah, I do remind the lathe guys when they say, well, that's not our chips. Well, remember, you have milling too. So it could
there
be.
There you go. Eric, one of the questions that we like to close with here is about going back in time, to when you first got into manufacturing, when the torch was first lit, and giving some advice to a prior version of yourself. I think because of some of the stories that you shared today, the way I would ask it to you is, if you could go back to that kid that was skipping high school classes to go hang out at the shop and talk to him, or, the kid that rode his bike 5 miles to get to the shop just to spend more time there, what advice would you give to him related to, being in manufacturing and the future of manufacturing and becoming, a successful person?
It's hard to say exactly what I would go back and say. I definitely would tell a younger version of myself to be more patient, but I would also tell them to keep working and just do good. If you work hard and you try, I'm going to throw another quote in for you. Dr. Seuss, it's think left, think right, think up, think down. Oh, the things you can think up if only you try.
Yep.
So that's what I would tell a younger version of myself, is to try. Just make sure you're always trying. You can be successful if you're always trying.
That's a fantastic one, Eric. I definitely appreciate having you on the podcast. You are certainly a manufacturing maverick. I know at the outset you said you didn't feel that way, but I'll tell you, the way Paramount is run, the culture, the people, the technology, the investment back into the business, the contributions to Salt Lake City, Utah, the NTMA, these are exactly the stories that we're trying to find out there and that we're trying to make sure are heard in this industry and are motivating and inspiring for the next generation. You've definitely accomplished that. Fantastic having you on the show. Deeply appreciate our partnership as companies, and hope you enjoy that little surprise when you walk back out to the Swiss area there on the TV.
Perfect. Yeah. And I, again, started it with very humbled. I'm just a guy. You said I'm just a guy that cares, and that's the difference. And we definitely, doesn't matter who you are, if you're in the FOD room, if you're mopping floors, if you're running a 5-axis mill, a screw machine, like, we all have the potential in us to be manufacturing mavericks, and it's just given that 0.5% more times. And very humbling, but also I think that everyone does have that potential to be a maverick, and just gotta take ownership.
Everyone can get out there and start ripping chips, right?
Exactly. Ripping chips.
Awesome. Well, great having you on, Eric. Thanks again for your time, and hope you take care.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Hopefully we'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you for listening to Manufacturing Mavericks. If you'd like to learn more, listen to past episodes, or nominate a future Maverick to be on our show, visit mfgmavericks.com. And don't forget to subscribe to and rate this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or your favorite podcast app.